What's a secret you found out that you absolutely were not supposed to know? Story 1. When I was in primary school, a friend of mine told me a secret I couldn't tell anyone. It was something along the lines of her and her mother coming home to find another woman with her dad in their bedroom, and her father hitting both of them, and even her toddler brother, for walking in on them. At the time, I thought it was strange enough that I still remember her telling me this almost 30 years later. But I didn't say anything because it was my friend's secret, and she made me swear not to tell anyone. It wasn't until I was in high school, long after we had lost contact, that I finally realized that this 6-year-old girl had witnessed her father cheating and then being physically abusive toward his entire family. I wish I had told my parents. Story 2. My uncle was a Monsignor in the Lincoln, Nebraska Catholic Diocese. Part of his job was to counsel the victims of sexual abuse and convince them not to press charges. He also relocated offending priests to different parishes to keep them away from the children who were supposedly responsible for the temptations that led to the assaults. It was a big family secret. Honestly, a big secret of the church itself. I don't think I was ever supposed to know about it. But I do. And now you do. Whenever I mention it on Reddit, Catholics downvote me, but they never defend themselves. They don't deny it. They just tithe and keep contributing to it. Story 3. That the pictures of me in the hospital as a newborn were staged. Not joking. I was an induced birth. My biological dad was awful and had my mom's blood pressure so high they were worried it might kill both of us. The doctors told my mom the day before, "Get here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We'll have a bed ready and you'll be having your baby, so call whoever you need to call." So, almost 24 hours notice that I was coming. My grandparents lived 2 hours away. I was born at exactly 4:32 p.m., and my grandparents showed up about half an hour after I was already born. They were so embarrassed about missing it, in a no one can ever know kind of way, that they asked the doctor to stage photos as if they'd been there the whole time, including holding my already cut umbilical cord on my stomach so it looked like it was being cut, even though that had actually happened almost half an hour earlier. I'll never understand why the doctor went along with it, especially since they'd accidentally overdosed my mom on pain meds, leaving her almost unconscious and unable to object. I found all of this out years later after my grandparents said they couldn't attend an awards ceremony where I was getting a scholarship for violin, and my mom went off on a rant about how they'd missed that, but drive all the way to Tennessee from Michigan for my little cousin's random golf tournament. They said, "Oh, that's just not true. We show up for everything." And she yelled back, "You weren't even there for my daughter's birth and made the doctor stage photos to make it look like you were." Honestly, I find it hilarious. Like, who does that? LMAO. Story 4. Not nearly as wild or dramatic as some others, but still. One time, my mom asked me for advice about my sister, who was naturally very smart but completely unmotivated. My mom was starting to realize that her sweet, Disney-loving, horse-obsessed, chubby, glasses-wearing little angel who adored country music and The Bachelor was, in fact, a lying little brat. I had known from a young age that my baby sister was a very talented liar, excellent at eavesdropping and a master manipulator. She figured out early on that being the quiet, bookish, well-behaved kid gave her the perfect cover to steal, lie, and cheat her way into and out of anything. It sounds funny, but this girl believed in Santa until she was like 13 because she realized that pretending to be innocent meant more presents. Clever. Anyway, my mom accidentally let it slip one day that she had been secretly testing my sister by reading her diary and notebooks. This was before cell phones, and casually asking her questions about things she had written to see if she'd tell the truth. That's how she started catching her in constant lies, something she really struggled to accept. Long story short, hearing that made me curious enough to dig a little deeper, and in my 20s, I discovered that my mom had been reading my diaries and going through my room for years. She just never got caught. I eventually showed her proof of how I found out, and she went white as a sheet. I quickly changed the subject and never brought it up again. Story 5. I have 2 friends who are best friends with each other. They're both married, and their wives are friends too. They vacation together, coach together, hang out all the time, and I think they've even flipped properties together. About 2 years ago, I was working in a town about 40 minutes from where we live and happened to pass a no-tell motel. There were only 3 cars in the parking lot, and 2 of them were theirs. I knew because I actually doubled back and saw the window stickers on my buddy's truck. To confirm, I called him, and he quickly texted back, "Can't talk," in a meeting. At first, I thought maybe the two couples were low-key swingers or something, but then I remembered that one of the wives is a teacher, and school was definitely in session that day. 2 years later, they're all still close friends and seem totally fine. I'm 100% sure I wasn't supposed to find that out, but I did. I don't plan on ever saying anything, but it's definitely made things weird, and I found myself hanging out with them less and less. Story 6. My dad was having an affair with his secretary for a while. I found out when I was about 10. My parents separated a couple of times over the years, but they eventually stayed together for good when my mom got pregnant again while I was in high school. He didn't stop seeing the other woman until around that time, and when he finally did, she sent my mom a baby gift that turned out to be a box filled with all the letters, gifts, and mementos my dad had given her throughout their affair. To this day, I don't know if my dad knows that I know. My mom tried to tell me about it when I was around 22, but I told her I already knew. It was an ugly moment. She was trying to tell me not to be honest, but to hurt me somehow. I don't know if my younger siblings know about the affair, or if my youngest sibling even knows that our parents weren't living together right before they were born. I'm in my 40s now, and my mom is currently in the process of being formally diagnosed with what we all assume is Alzheimer's. When we visited recently, my husband took her out shopping, and as they drove past my dad's old apartment, she casually pointed it out and told him that's where my dad had lived when they were separated because of his affair. So I guess it probably won't stay a secret much longer, and honestly, I'm not sure how to handle that. Story 7. My mother died of cancer when I was 6, and my older sister was 8. She left a trust, something I knew existed, but I never knew what was actually in it. Years later, during some family drama involving my sister, my father mentioned being unsure of what to do with the income from the trust. When I asked what he meant, he got defensive and evasive. The next time I was house-sitting for him, I snooped. That's when I found out the truth. My mother's trust generates about $30,000 a year in income. My father also receives a $105,000 retirement package, owns 4 houses and a huge plot of land, has a stock portfolio worth several million, and at least one bank account with over $850,000 in it. Meanwhile, I'm on SNAP and Medicaid, having never made more than $24,000 a year between disability and bad luck. The language of the trust puts him in full control of everything, and when I asked him directly, he flat out told me that he keeps the income from it for himself. The copies I found make no mention of me or my sister benefiting until after his death. The trust was signed just 2 weeks before my mom went into a permanent coma. Her best friend, who's a doctor, told me she was barely lucid at that point. So yeah, my own father swindled my dying mother to keep her money from her own children. Then again, he's never been the kind of man to let his kids have more if it meant he'd have less. Story 8. Some of these are pretty dark, mine's not so much. At a previous job, I was required to be on call. I never once had an emergency. I'm the kind of person who gets anxious over unread notifications, so when something comes in, I check it immediately. Late one night, my phone dinged with a new email. I opened it right away, and it was from my boss, the CEO of our small company, with a spreadsheet attached. It was a complete list of everyone's salaries. I have a strong, almost photographic memory, and I can still picture that sheet in my head more than 10 years later. Just a quick glance was enough to permanently imprint it. Moments later, my phone rang. It was my boss, panicking. He asked if I'd opened the email. I said, "Nope, I just picked up when you called." He sighed in relief and told me to delete it immediately without opening it once I checked my inbox. Now, this was the same boss I once threatened to break the fingers of because he put his hand above my knee at a conference. But to his credit, he did pay fairly. I was a senior engineer at the time, and I saw that I was paid right in line with the other engineers, regardless of gender. The only employees who made more, besides him, were our chief architect, our VP, and 2 other engineers, one with a PhD and the other with 20 years of experience, all men. Story 9. I don't know if it's true, but I've learned not to question people's truth in these matters. I found out when I was about 16 or 17 that my brother's girlfriend, who went to a different school, had been only 14 when she dated my brother. He was 19 at the time, about a year and a half older than me. I remember my dad scolding my brother for dating a younger girl, but I never understood until later that the reason for the argument was that she was 14. My brother ended the relationship, but years later I ran into the girl again and she was distant, so I apologized for bothering her. Her then boyfriend went to my school and trusted me enough to tell me why she was acting that way. She believed, after therapy, that my brother had groomed her when she was 14 and he was 19. I was beside myself and told him that, although I'm related to my brother and we're close, I genuinely didn't know. I had honestly thought my dad meant someone a few years younger, not a 14-year-old. He seemed to accept that I didn't know and said he and his girlfriend now live out of town, but were visiting relatives. He asked where my brother worked so he could avoid him, adding that if he saw him he'd punch his lights out. I laughed it off and said it was unlikely in a town our size, and that I hoped my brother had matured and hadn't dated anyone that young since. It still gives me chills that I was completely unaware for years that my dad had been so furious with my brother over dating a teenager younger than me. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.